the Qianyuan continent, where martial strength reigns supreme. There are 4 places: Northern Wasteland, Western Region, Eastern State, and Southern Blue. Martial artists advance through 9 ranks, growing step by step. It's said that a 9th-rank martial artist with a single hand could fight 10,000 men without defeat. Yet, in the eastern state of the continent, there exists a powerful nation that no force or warrior dares to provoke, and it is called the Martial Empire. Because the Martial Empire is home to the youngest 9th-rank martial artist in history. Her name was Martial Empress Wu Exen. But then, someone was holding her feet as he was massaging it. It turns out that it was the fiancé of the Empress, as he asked if his strength was enough to massage her feet, and Empress Exen was left speechless. Suddenly, the official of the Martial Empire screams as he points to the fiancé of Empress Exen about his behavior. The official of the Martial Empire, Jia Rini, told Empress Exen that she must impeach the prince consort Wenming for disturbing the court in destiny. Then Rini asks if she could annul the engagement and strip Ming of his noble status, to which the other officials agree about Rini's complaint. Upon hearing it, Ming got annoyed as he mumbled that they were a bunch of noisy old fogies. It turns out he was the prince consort of the Martial Empire, and to his mind, those group of decrepit geezers, always scheming to ruin his dream of an easy life. In his previous life, before he became a prince consort, he used to be just an ordinary office worker on Earth. After his graduation, he ended up in a sweatshop of a company. Fresh out of school, he believed in his boss's empty promises and worked himself to death with overtime. One day, while he was working, he just collapsed and dropped dead in front of his computer. So, in this life, he was reborn as the son of the Grand Marshal of the Northern Frontier, Northern Marquis, and with such a prestigious background, he thought he could coast through life in luxury. He figured being born into wealth meant he could relax forever. But then his so-called cheap old man was assigned by the late emperor to guard the northern frontier. The old man took his mother, the servants, and all the family wealth, leaving only him behind. And because of that, it shattered his plans for an easy life. While the paper was floating in the air, one of the papers suddenly landed on his face, which he quickly noticed. Ming quickly read it as it said that his father left behind an imperial marriage contract with the late emperor, which made him happy. After reading it, Ming quickly goes to the Martial Empire as he happily approaches her fiancée, Martial Empress Wu Exen. From that moment, Empress Exen's interests became his interests. Whatever Empress Exen wanted, he wanted too. Driven by his sweet flash, he didn't notice that his face was rubbing into the legs of Empress Exen as the Martial Empress became his new life goal. In his mind, only by hugging her thigh tightly could he slack off without worry and avoid the fate of his past life, and Empress Exen got annoyed with Wenming for his actions. After seeing it, Empress Exen got mad as she told Wenming that he didn't need to use his face to massage her. Empress Exen pointed to Wenming as she reminded him that she was the emperor right now and to stop treating her like he did when they were kids, to which Wenming agreed and told her he'd be extra careful next time. In his mind, he got annoyed that teenage girls sure are troublesome. If he didn't need to mooch off her, he wouldn't bother playing along. Suddenly, Rini shouted as he said that Wenming dared to touch her imperial body, so he needed to impeach Wenming for disrespecting the throne. Upon hearing it, Wenming got infuriated as he explained that he was just helping his dear wife to relieve muscle tension. A healthy martial empress means a stable and prosperous empire. But then Rini responded that slandering a high-ranking official is the biggest crime, and it can be grown by the second. While Wenming and Rini are continuously throwing painful words at each other, the Empress is silent as she feels disappointed in them. Suddenly, Empress Exen got annoyed and shouted as she told them that they should shut up. Because of that, the other officials got scared, and they covered their eyes and heads as the dust and small rocks scattered all over the room. Empress Exen, with her merciless face, told the official that she summoned them to court today to discuss state affairs, not to bicker like fishwives. After hearing it, the officials got scared and immediately kneeled on the floor as they apologized to Empress Exen. So Wenming mocked the officials as he told everyone that his dear wife had had enough of their nonsense excuse. And Empress Exen just looked at Wenming with a cold expression. Meanwhile, Rini looked at Wenming as if he was infuriated about what he just said. In Wenming's mind, once he married Empress Exen in a year, he'd make sure that these officials would kneel and beg for his mercy, to which Wenming put an evil smile on his face. Suddenly, Empress Exen called Wenming, to which Wenming got a bad feeling about it. Empress Xian advises him that they are only engaged until they're married, so don't call her wife so casually, to which Wenming awkwardly tells her that he understood. After saying that, Empress Xian sighed as she was very stressed about what was happening right now. As she sat down on her throne, Empress Xian told everyone that they should start discussing the state of the affair. But then Wenming mumbled as he belittled Empress Xian, and once they were married, he'd show her what his family's house rules are all about. But then Empress Xian heard that Wenming was mumbling, and she asked what he was mumbling about, to which Wenming asked what he was just saying after sitting for so long as if she needed another massage. But Empress Xian responded that she didn't need it as she wanted to focus on state affairs and asked if there was an urgent report from the northern frontier. So Rennie responded that they'd received intelligence from their scouts, and it appeared the barbarian tribes were mobilizing large-scale forces. He added that they likely plan to invade while Empress Xian's reign is still newly established, to which Empress Xian was left speechless. But then, Wenming interrupted their talking as he said to Empress Xian that she didn't need to worry. Wenming explained that his old man was invincible. Those barbarians wouldn't dare to cross into their territory. Then Empress Xian recalls and calls Wenming an idiot, as his father is from Northern Marquis and is an unparalleled warrior. Suddenly, someone shouted as she told Empress Xian that she had a report, to which everyone in the room was surprised. Immediately, an unknown girl was rushed toward the room, to which all of the officials were surprised about her appearance. The girl named Zhiyue told Empress Xian that an urgent message from the northern frontier, and she asked Empress Xian to take a look. As she was going to talk, Wenming tried to interrupt Zhiyue and told everyone that it must be news if his father crushed the barbarian forces, which Zhiyue was left speechless. Wenming teases Rennie as he tells him that these are the real officials contributing to the empire and suggests Rennie take some notes. Suddenly, Empress Xian asks Zhiyue what the report says and tells her to read it louder, to which Zhiyue agrees. But then Wenming suggests to her that she should say it louder and clearer as he needs every detail of his old man's heroics, announced the court. Zhiyue told everyone that the urgent report from the northern frontier yesterday at dawn. The barbarian tribes launched a massive invasion with 200,000 troops. At noon, Grand Marshal Wen Tian led their forces to intercept them. While Wenming was complacent, with a cold tone of her voice, Zhiyue added that by nightfall, as the battle was raging, Grand Marshal Wen Tian defected to the barbarians. Upon hearing it, Wenming was surprised as he began to pale and his sweat dripping all over his face. Without any delay, Zhiyue immediately grabbed Wenming's hands and placed them behind his back, to which Wenming was surprised. So Zhiyue asked Empress Xian what should they do with the traitor's son, but then Wenming resisted as he told Zhiyue that it must be some kind of misunderstanding that his father had been framed. But then Rennie teases Wenming as him that even now he makes lame excuses, to which Wenming got infuriated. So Rennie quickly announces that he had long suspected that the Northern Marquis harbored treacherous ambitions, and Wenming as his son must be a barbarian spy planted in their empire. Because of that, the other officials gritted their teeth as they happily agreed that Wenming should be executed as an example of betraying the empire. While they were busy cheering the execution of Wenming, Empress Xian stayed silent as she was disappointed after hearing the news. Meanwhile, Wenming felt uneasy and in his mind, he asked his father why he betrayed him just like this. And if he was going to rebel, could he have at least taken Wenming with his father? Wenming gritted his teeth while looking at Empress Xian. After all of his efforts to win Empress Xian over, he'd be about to become a prince consort only for his old man to stab him in the back, and he barely had a day of peace in this world. After the realization, Wenming screams that for the sake of their childhood friendship, as he begs that she should grant him a chance to uncover the truth behind his father's betrayal. Wenming added as he begged Empress Xian should show some mercy to him, which Empress Xian was surprised. After hearing it, Empress Xian recalls their childhood days when they both had their side through ups and downs. But then, Empress Xian announced that she wouldn't kill Wenming, to which Wenming was glad after hearing it. Because of that, Rennie and the other officials were shocked as they told Empress Xian that she shouldn't be swayed by his lies and that traitors must be executed as soon as possible. But then Empress Xian got annoyed and told everyone to shut their mouth, to which the officials had nothing left to do but to shut their complaints. So Empress Xian explained that Wenming would be spared, but that doesn't mean that he would not be punished as he would be still punished. After hearing it, Wenming told Empress Xian that he willingly accepted his punishment, but in his mind, all of his fawning over her was finally paying off as long as he'd stayed alive, and he still had high hopes. So Empress Xian told Zhuyue that she should throw Wenming in the dungeons, to which Zhuyue understood it. But then she explained that the imperial physician castrated Wenming and made him an eunuch in the palace, which Wenming was left puzzled and turned into a stone. After hearing it, Wenming can't fight his feelings and screams uncontrollably, and his voice is heard all over the palace. After the recent events, within the Wuxin residence hall of the Blessings and Tranquility Palace, Empress Xian made her way to the hot tub. Steam surrounded her as she tied up her hair, stepping into the soothing warmth of the water. As she submerged herself, she felt a sense of relief wash over her after a long and exhausting day. Despite the calming atmosphere, a deep sadness lingered within her. The northern border was under attack by barbarians. The northern marquis was holding a hostage in the capital, and now, Wenming's father had suddenly rebelled. She couldn't help but question why all of this was happening at once. As she recalled Wenming's reaction earlier, she analyzed his panic and concluded that this rebellion was unlikely to have been premeditated. However, this only led to more questions. What hidden motives could he possibly have? A voice suddenly broke her thoughts, asking what had her so troubled. Empress Xian turned her attention toward the speaker, a familiar face. Slowly, the woman settled beside her and revealed that she had a guess. It was none other than Tao Sisi, a 6th-rank martial artist and Empress Xian's close friend. With a teasing smirk, Sisi suggested that perhaps Xian was simply missing her, which took the Empress by surprise. Before she could respond, Sisi casually reached forward, touching Empress Xian's chest, and playfully remarked on its remarkable softness. Embarrassment immediately spread across the Empress's face as Sisi continued her teasing comments, marveling at its elasticity. Flustered, Empress Xian quickly pushed her away, scolding her for never outgrowing her inappropriate habits. Unbothered, Sisi simply laughed and admitted that she couldn't resist, considering Empress Xian's exceptional figure. Xian then took a moment to acknowledge the noticeable changes in Sisi's physique as well, remarking on how much she had grown over the years. Sisi, caught off guard by the unexpected compliment, stammered in embarrassment, prompting Xian to smirk and dismiss her reaction. As Sisi adjusted her clothing, Xian inquired about her presence, noting that she was supposed to be training in the mountains and still had a long journey ahead before completing her studies. However, Sisi confidently replied that she had already mastered her master's techniques long ago. She then recalled her teacher's words. Though skilled, she was reckless and needed to temper her mind before truly grasping the mountain's lessons. Empress Xian nodded in agreement, playfully teasing her about it. But Sisi's expression shifted as she explained that after hearing about Xian's ascension to the throne, her master had sent her down from the mountain to aid in governing the empire. She acknowledged the difficulties of ruling and reassured Xian that she would always have her loyal minister by her side. Without hesitation, Sisi knelt before the Empress and solemnly swore on the name of the 8th Trigram sect to help her overcome any obstacle. Xian, overwhelmed by the declaration, could only watch in silence. However, the serious atmosphere quickly faded as Sisi suddenly hesitated, mentioning that there was an important matter to discuss. With a confident tone, she brought up the recent political turmoil, including the rebellion and the court's unrest, leaving Empress Xian momentarily caught off guard by her abrupt shift in demeanor. In response, Xian vaguely mentioned a friend struggling with a difficult decision. Sisi, intrigued, leaned in closer, eager to hear more. As Xian reflected, memories of her childhood with Wenming surfaced. She recalled how, out of gratitude for an elder's kindness, she had agreed to a marriage pact with his son, Wenming. For over a decade, he had treated her with unwavering devotion, always fulfilling her every wish. But now, she had learned that the very man who had once shown her kindness had betrayed her and defected to the enemy. This revelation left her questioning everything, including Wenming's true feelings. Was his love for her genuine, or would he one day follow in his father's footsteps and betray her as well? Sisi, upon hearing this, let out a disappointed sigh. With the wedding approaching, Xian admitted that she didn't know how to face her fiancé. Just as she was about to say more, Sisi interrupted her, narrowing her eyes in suspicion as if she were about to reveal the so-called friend's identity. However, before she could say anything, Xian cut her off, demanding to know what she meant. A mischievous grin spread across Sisi's face as she laughed, revealing that she was merely teasing her. Annoyed, Empress Xian let out a forced chuckle and demanded a serious answer. Still amused, Sisi shared a piece of wisdom from her master. While a man may control his words, his actions will always reveal the truth. If he is unfaithful, it will manifest in his behavior. Understanding her point, Xian realized that his actions would eventually expose his true nature. Sisi then suggested a simple test, having someone trustworthy subtly seduce Wenming to see if he would remain loyal. Empress Xian fell into deep thought, considering the idea. After a moment, she finally made a decision. She turned to Sisi, offering her a small smile before declaring that she had chosen who would seduce her fiancé. Sisi tilted her head in confusion, waiting for the answer. Without hesitation, Empress Xian patted her shoulder and declared, "You." Stunned, Sisi's eyes widened in disbelief. After a brief silence, she let out a horrified scream. Later that evening, in the castration chamber, the sound of sharpening metal echoed through the dimly lit room. A bald man with a thick beard grinned as he turned to Wenming, casually asking if he was ready. Eyes wide with fear, Wenming frantically shook his head, insisting that he was falsely accused. He desperately explained that Empress Xian had only made such a declaration to appease the ministers and pleaded for mercy. Before he could say more, his uncle forcefully shoved a cloth into his mouth, silencing him. With a cold stare, he raised his blade and pointed it at Wenming's groin, warning him that since his father was a traitor, he had only two options: lose his manhood or lose his life. Terror consumed Wenming as he trembled beneath his uncle's gaze. However, what made it even worse was the unsettling way his uncle assured him that it wouldn't hurt after a single clean cut. Unable to speak, Wenming panicked, realizing that if this actually happened, he would become history's first castrated transmigrator. Suddenly, the door burst open with a loud crash, startling both Wenming and his uncle. Standing in the doorway was none other than Sisi, grinning as she cheerfully ordered his uncle to halt. She held up an official document, announcing that the imperial decree for Wenming's castration had been reassigned. Tears streamed down Wenming's face as he clung to the hope that Empress Xian had decided to spare him. His uncle carefully examined the decree before confirming its authenticity. With a bright smile, Sisi explained that by the Empress's orders, she would personally carry out the procedure. As she unsheathed an enormous weapon, Wenming's face turned ghostly pale. Frozen in horror, Wenming could only watch as Sisi advanced toward him. Desperate, he begged his uncle to reconsider, but the man merely shrugged and walked away. With a heavy thud, Sisi's massive weapon struck the ground in front of him. Wenming, trembling, questioned whether the Empress truly intended for such a weapon to be used for his castration. Sisi's expression remained indifferent as she calmly stated that he should be grateful. After all, he was fortunate to have the most adorable and intelligent woman in the universe handling his punishment. Furious, Wenming declared that his heart belonged only to Empress Xian. However, before he could say more, Sisi cut him off and swiftly pulled down his trousers. One glance was all it took for her expression to change. Her confidence wavered as she muttered to herself, questioning how she was even supposed to cut something like that. Wenming, his voice laced with desperation, demanded to know why she was even here if she didn't know what to do. But before he could protest any further, Sisi's blade moved in a blur, and in an instant it was done. A fountain of blood sprayed into the air. Both Wenming and Sisi stood in stunned silence, unable to process what had just happened. Then the pain set in, and Wenming's scream echoed throughout the chamber. Outside, his uncle wiped away a tear, solemnly acknowledging that the Wu dynasty had gained yet another eunuch. Meanwhile, Sisi stared in shock at the blood pooling around her feet. Wenming, still writhing in agony, pleaded with her to stop gawking and help him stop the bleeding. With an apologetic smile, Sisi sheepishly admitted that she had forgotten one thing. She fainted at the sight of blood. And with that, she collapsed to the ground, leaving Wenming to scream in agony as his wound continued to bleed uncontrollably. When night fell over the steward hall, the moon was full, and the stars shimmered gracefully above. Inside the palace, Wenming sat in frustration, tending to his wound. He cursed Sisi for being so heartless. If she hadn't fainted at the sight of blood, she would have noticed that his injury was only on his thigh. He shuddered at the thought. If she had aimed slightly higher, he would have truly become a eunuch. He knew he had to be careful. If anyone discovered that he had not actually been castrated, he would lose both his big head and his little head. A noise outside his door made him tense up. It was Sisi. She stepped inside with a bright smile. "Wenming, are you doing well?" she asked sweetly. "I've brought an expert in eunuchs to check on you." A chill ran down Wenming's spine. "An expert in eunuchs?" The man beside Sisi chuckled. "Grand Chamberlain Eunuch Hai, at your service. Though calling myself an expert would be excessive, I do have a bit more experience in this field." Wenming immediately buried himself under the blanket. He refused to let them see his body. Sisi, noticing his reaction, frowned. "Wenming, are you feeling unwell?" Eunuch Hai nodded knowingly. "It must be the pain. He's holding back his tears." A common reaction. Underneath the blanket, Wenming gritted his teeth. If he weren't afraid of exposing his secret, he would have punched Eunuch Hai twice by now. Sisi sighed. "It's just a couple of ounces of flesh. It's not the end of the world. We can still be good sisters, can't we?" Before Wenming could react, she smacked his wound. Pain shot through his body. "Ah!" Sisi gasped. "Wait, are you actually crying? I didn't think becoming a eunuch would be this painful." She turned to Eunuch Hai. "How long does it take to recover from castration?" Eunuch Hai shrugged. "It varies from person to person, but judging by his condition, he'll survive." The inner palace has gained another outstanding comrade. Wenming nearly choked on his own rage. If his father's rebellion succeeded, he would make sure these two paid for this humiliation. Eunuch Hai bowed. "I have other matters to attend to. I'll leave things to you, Lady Sisi." Sisi nodded. "Thank you, Grand Chamberlain." Wenming watched as Eunuch Hai left, then turned to Sisi with a forced smile. "My dear Lady Sisi, the most intelligent, adorable, and beautiful young lady in the world, now that I'm feeling better, you can leave, right?" Sisi smirked. "Not so fast. Empress Wu Xian personally assigned me to take care of you. Until you fully recover, I'll be handling everything. Your meals, your daily routine." Wenming's stomach dropped. This was bad. Empress Wu Xian was still suspicious of him. Sisi was here to monitor him. Sisi suddenly tilted her head. "Speaking of which, have you eaten anything since you were caught?" Right on cue, Wenming's stomach growled loudly. Sisi giggled. "So you haven't eaten. I'll bring you something." Wenming felt a tiny bit of relief. At least she had some conscience. But then Sisi handed him a bun. "Open your mouth." Wenming hesitated. Why?" Before he could react, Sisi shoved several buns into his mouth at once. His eyes widened in horror as his mouth filled up. Sisi beamed. "Eat more so you can recover faster." Wenming struggled to breathe. He flailed his arms, terrified. She was definitely trying to kill him. Unable to handle it anymore, he collapsed to the ground, pretending to faint. Sisi blinked in confusion. He passed out after just a few bites. Shrugging, she walked away to tidy up the courtyard. "I might actually have a talent for taking care of people." As soon as she left, Wenming spat out all the buns, gasping for air. "This place is a death trap. If this keeps up, I'll die here for sure." Then his eyes landed on a weapon in the corner. A new thought entered his mind. If he could deal with Sisi, he could escape. Later that night, in the courtyard, Sisi hummed as she swept the fallen leaves. Unbeknownst to her, Wenming crept up behind her, gripping a wooden staff. He raised it, ready to strike. Then out of nowhere, Sisi casually lifted a massive boulder with one hand and tossed it aside like it weighed nothing. Wenming froze. Sisi turned around. "Huh, Wenming? Why are you here?" Wenming quickly hid the staff behind his back. I need to use the restroom." Sisi frowned. "Then why are you holding a wooden staff?" Wenming panicked. "I was just castrated. I need support to walk." Sisi nodded. "Oh, that makes sense. Be careful." As he walked away, Wenming's thoughts raced. Sisi looked ordinary, but she was freakishly strong. He recalled the gigantic knife she had used earlier. If she decided to castrate him again, he wouldn't stand a chance. Suddenly, movement in the bushes caught Sisi's attention. A cold aura filled the air. From the shadows, Empress Wu Xian emerged. Sisi flinched. "Why, Your Majesty?" Wu Xian glared at her. "I told you to scare him into confessing. Why did you castrate him?" Sisi pouted. "It was ugly. I slipped." Wu Xian sighed. "Now that he's a eunuch, there's no point in testing his loyalty anymore." Sisi gasped. "Wait, are you saying you wanted to test him? Then, you're not actually Wenming?" Wu Xian's face twitched. "Of course not. I just thought that since he's now a eunuch, he won't have ambitions anymore. There's no way to prove whether he's involved in the rebellion." Sisi grinned. Don't worry, Your Majesty. I've devised a foolproof plan. Wu Xian raised an eyebrow. Oh, Sisi explained. The palace latrines have low walls. If Wenming has any rebellious thoughts, he'll definitely try to use a restroom trip to climb over and escape. Meanwhile, Wenming checked the walls of the courtyard. There were no guards outside. He smirked. Escape was within his grasp. He climbed the fence, thinking, did Sisi really think she could keep me here? Once I find my father, I'll make sure to take the throne. But the moment he jumped over, pain shot through his body. Sisi's traps had sprung. Wu Xian and Sisi heard his scream. Sisi grinned. See, he's trying to escape. That proves he's a traitor. Wu Xian sighed. That's too much. Sisi ignored her. Let's capture him and interrogate him. At that moment, elsewhere in the palace, Eunuch Hai heard the scream. He sighed. Just ignore it. The eunuchs around him nodded, pretending they heard nothing. A white dove flew past. Eunuch Hai threw a walnut, striking the bird and causing a letter to fall into his hands. As he read the message, his expression darkened. So it's true, he muttered. The Wen family has truly betrayed the empire. Upon arriving, Sisi burst into laughter, believing she had caught Wenming red-handed, with blood pooling on the floor. She forcefully kicked the door open and ordered Wenming not to move. However, to her shock, it was Wenming who appeared startled, his blood seemingly gushing out uncontrollably. This unexpected sight left Sisi momentarily stunned. Overwhelmed by the amount of blood, Sisi lost consciousness. Empress Xian immediately caught her and called out her name in an attempt to wake her. Annoyed by the intrusion, Wenming questioned their presence, accusing them of being perverse for watching him while he was simply using the toilet. Empress Xian quickly apologized, explaining that it was all a misunderstanding. Growing even more furious, Wenming lashed out, reminding Empress Xian that not only had she castrated him, but now she sought to humiliate him further. He stood up, spat blood in their direction, and mockingly declared himself the former prince consort turned eunuch. Empress Xian, trying to defuse the situation, called his name and attempted to calm him. Wenming erupted into laughter, taunting them for avoiding his gaze. Frustrated, Empress Xian lost her patience and used Sisi to shove Wenming forcefully, sending him crashing into the wall. Afterward, they left the room, and Empress Xian apologized to Sisi for using her to push Wenming. Meanwhile, Wenming smirked, pleased that his plan was unfolding as expected and that he had successfully deceived them. As Empress Xian attempted to wake Sisi, she lamented the embarrassing situation they had just endured in front of Wenming. When Sisi regained consciousness, she dismissed the concern, stating that since Wenming was now a eunuch, he wouldn't dare spread word of her humiliation. Irritated, Empress Xian pinched Sisi's face, demanding to know who had given her the authority to castrate Wenming. However, her concern soon shifted to Wenming's worsening condition, realizing he had lost a significant amount of blood. She then assigned Sisi the task of ensuring Wenming's recovery, to which Sisi readily agreed. Before departing, Empress Xian reminded Sisi to be considerate of Wenming. As she walked away, she felt relieved that he had not betrayed her after all. From a distance, Wenming observed them, questioning why they had followed him into the restroom. He wondered if they had begun to suspect something. Recalling the earlier incident, he realized his wound had reopened when he climbed the wall. If not for that, he wouldn't be stuck in this predicament. Determined, he prepared to flee, but Sisi, noticing him, made a mental note not to be easily fooled. She was certain she would uncover his true motives one day. That evening, back at the palace, Wenming collapsed onto his bed, exhausted from Sisi's relentless torment and his excessive blood loss. Gritting his teeth, he retrieved a stolen spoon, telling himself it was his key to escape. He envisioned his plan, inspired by the many films he had seen in his past life, digging a tunnel through the palace's sewage system to freedom. Suddenly, Sisi's voice interrupted his thoughts, startling him. Unbeknownst to Wenming, Sisi had already suspected he was hiding something beneath his bed. As Sisi organized her belongings, Wenming demanded to know why she was in his room and what all the items were for. She casually explained that Empress Xian had ordered her to take care of his daily needs. He was left speechless when Sisi began undressing. Stripping off her upper garment, Sisi questioned why Wenming appeared so flustered. She reminded him that regardless of her state of undress, there was nothing he could do about it. Embarrassed, Wenming covered his eyes. Sisi smirked, recalling advice from an old woman. Sleepy men like Wenming were the easiest to manipulate into revealing secrets. Seeing this as the perfect opportunity, she had no intention of letting it slip away. Even with his eyes covered, Wenming insisted that, eunuch or not, her actions were highly inappropriate. Before he could react further, Sisi suddenly positioned herself beneath him, shocking Wenming as he stammered, asking what she was doing. She playfully tied her hair back, explaining that she was merely applying medicine to his wound. Panicked, Wenming protested, insisting he could do it himself. However, Sisi dismissed his objections, warning that Empress Xian would be furious if she failed her duty. When Wenming questioned if she understood the concept of propriety between men and women, Sisi forcefully pressed her body against him, causing him to freeze in shock. He realized that if this continued, he might become visibly aroused, exposing the fact that he was not actually castrated. Sisi's strength made it impossible for him to resist, and she commanded him to stop struggling. However, her curiosity was piqued. She wanted to know what he was hiding beneath his clothes. Terrified, Wenming knew he had to act fast. To maintain his cover, he squeezed his wound, directing the blood toward Sisi's face. The sight of blood overwhelmed her, and she immediately felt dizzy. As Sisi collapsed into a deep sleep, Wenming sighed in relief. His plan had worked. Yet he remained anxious, knowing that Sisi's presence could ruin his escape. Frustrated, he glanced at the spoon, realizing he needed to accelerate his plan before she uncovered his secret. Just as he was plotting his next move, Sisi unexpectedly reached out in her sleep, startling him. She pulled Wenming onto the bed, mumbling in her sleep about wanting him to confess. Wenming knew he was in serious trouble. Even in sleep, Sisi continued to act unpredictably. He anxiously observed their position, only for Sisi to raise her hand once more, claiming she had caught him. Before he could react, Sisi instinctively grabbed onto him, causing Wenming to freeze in shock. He realized, to his horror, that she had successfully grasped the very thing he was trying to hide. As morning arrived, Sisi remained in deep slumber while Wenming, wide awake, stayed on high alert. He was relieved she hadn't woken up yet. Otherwise, he was certain she would have exposed him. However, as he was lost in thought, he failed to notice that Sisi had already opened her eyes. Without hesitation, she swiftly grabbed him and pulled him toward her, catching him off guard. She pinned both of his hands, holding him in place. Then, positioning herself on top of him, Sisi directly asked the question Wenming had dreaded the most. What exactly was he hiding beneath his clothes? Sisi reached out and felt something firm on Wenming, prompting her to ask what it was. Wenming, flustered and panicked, pleaded with her not to dig any deeper. Internally, he was in complete despair, convinced that both his metaphorical and literal heads were on the verge of disaster. With a mischievous smirk, Sisi leaned closer and teased him, asking if she should take a look. As she pulled the object free, silence fell between them. It was the spoon Wenming had stolen the day before. Staring at it in confusion, Sisi questioned why he was carrying a spoon. Wenming sheepishly explained that he had gotten hungry the previous night and went searching for food. Scoffing, Sisi tossed the spoon back at him and remarked that he was boring before walking away. Once she was gone, Wenming let out a sigh of relief, grateful that he had hidden the spoon properly. If he hadn't, Sisi might have discovered something far more incriminating. However, before he could fully relax, Sisi turned back, calling his name. With a serious expression, she revealed that she had promised Empress Xian to look after him. She then ordered him to get up and eat breakfast, leaving Wenming puzzled. Still bewildered, Wenming quickly got up and asked what she meant. Meanwhile, Sisi was already preparing his meal. Once everything was ready, she proudly presented a plate of large, fluffy steamed buns, announcing that this was his breakfast. The sight of them made Wenming's face pale as he recalled what Sisi had previously done to those buns. Overcome with fear, he let out a scream, urging Sisi to stay away from him. 7 days later, Eunuch Hai made his way to Wenming and Sisi's quarters. Upon arrival, he greeted Wenming and informed him that his recovery period was over. Today, he would begin his duties in the palace. However, Eunuch Hai's expression shifted to surprise as he took in Wenming's appearance. The young man looked utterly exhausted and distressed. Sisi greeted Eunuch Hai with a smile and casually remarked that he had arrived just in time. Concerned, Eunuch Hai pointed out that Wenming didn't seem well and inquired about what had happened over the past week. Before Sisi could answer, Wenming suddenly grabbed Eunuch Hai's hands in desperation. With pleading eyes, Wenming begged to be taken away, insisting that he didn't care where they went as long as he could leave. Startled, Eunuch Hai tried to calm him down. Seeing no other choice, he turned to Sisi and declared that he would be taking Wenming with him immediately. Sisi simply smiled and told him to take good care of Wenming. As they left, she sighed in irritation. Despite 7 days, Wenming had not revealed any valuable information about the Northern Marquis Rebellion. Walking beside Eunuch Hai, Wenming was practically glowing with relief. He happily declared that he would do anything, as long as it meant he didn't have to return to Sisi. Eunuch Hai chuckled at his enthusiasm but reminded him that in his current state, he wouldn't be suited for heavy labor in the palace. However, as he observed Wenming, Eunuch Hai recalled the contents of a certain letter. Placing a reassuring hand on Wenming's shoulder, he assured him that, as the former imperial son-in-law, he would arrange a suitable position for him. Wenming's face lit up with gratitude, and he thanked Eunuch Hai sincerely. Eunuch Hai waved it off, saying it was nothing. However, Wenming couldn't help but notice the sudden shift in his demeanor and wondered what he was planning. Eventually, they arrived at the imperial kitchen, where a grand spread of dishes awaited them. Eunuch Hai explained that Wenming's new duty was to taste-test food prepared for the imperial household. Wenming's mouth watered at the sight, and he nodded eagerly, acknowledging his task. Eunuch Hai instructed him to take only a single bite from each dish, warning that displeasing Empress Xian would have serious consequences. Yet, when Wenming took his first taste, Eunuch Hai was shocked. Although Wenming followed the rule of taking only 1 bite per dish, his bites were far too large. Annoyed, Eunuch Hai sighed and let it slide, reasoning that Wenming hadn't eaten properly in days. He set about preparing another dish, but privately considered that if Wenming ever became useless, he'd deal with him accordingly. Suddenly, Wenming dropped to his knees before Eunuch Hai, catching him off guard. Perplexed, Eunuch Hai demanded to know what he was doing. Wenming, filled with emotion, explained that since entering the palace, Eunuch Hai had been the only person to show him true kindness. Feeling emboldened, Wenming then made a shocking request. He wished to recognize Eunuch Hai as his godfather. Eunuch Hai hesitated, reminding Wenming that his father, the Northern Marquis, was still alive. How could he take on such a role? Without hesitation, Wenming responded that his father had committed an unforgivable crime against the martial empire and was unworthy of the title. Eunuch Hai, visibly moved, teared up and declared that Wenming was a noble and righteous young man. They embraced, both promising loyalty to each other. Eunuch Hai assured Wenming that he would protect him and never let him suffer again. Yet, in the depths of Wenming's mind, he had other plans. He saw Eunuch Hai as nothing more than a stepping stone, someone he could use to rise in status. Once he found his real father, he would ensure that even the Northern Marquis would bow to him. At the same time, Eunuch Hai smirked inwardly. Wenming had fallen for his act, and as soon as he was no longer useful, he would be discarded. Back in the room, the old woman prepared tea while advising Wenming to be ready, explaining that the courtesan he was about to meet was a remarkable woman from the western regions. Someone even noble scions and prestigious families rarely had the privilege of encountering. As she spoke, Wenming's thoughts wandered. He found it suspicious that Eunuch Hai, despite knowing his status as the Grand Eunuch, had brought him here for a meal. Was this another test from Empress Xian's spies? With caution, Wenming told the old woman that he had no interest in courtesans, requesting food instead. However, she merely smiled and dismissed his words as a jest. Before leaving, the old woman playfully remarked that once Wenming saw her, he might find himself more interested than he expected. Wenming attempted to stop her, but she was already on her way out. Despite his calm demeanor, Wenming remained wary. Even the old woman seemed suspicious. Was he being watched from the shadows? Just then, the old woman announced Lady Ruyan's arrival, drawing Wenming's attention. When Lady Ruyan entered the room, Wenming instinctively stood up, quickly realizing something unusual about her. He was momentarily taken aback, muttering that she was far more exotic than he had anticipated. Lady Ruyan's servant immediately took offense, scoffing that Wenming was nothing more than an ignorant country bumpkin. Hearing the insult, Wenming questioned if she was referring to him, but the servant ignored him, instead unfurling a special red carpet across the floor. Wenming looked on in confusion. With the preparations complete, the servant turned to Lady Ruyan and warmly welcomed her into the room. Lady Ruyan stepped gracefully onto the red carpet, her presence alluring. She greeted Wenming with a captivating smile, holding a large watermelon, and apologized for making him wait. Wenming, captivated by her beauty, assured her it was no issue. Lady Ruyan's smile deepened, while Wenming averted his gaze. In his mind, he suspected Eunuch Hai had sent this foreign beauty to tempt him. Suddenly, Lady Ruyan reached out and gently touched Wenming's face, sending a wave of unease through him. Moving closer, she observed that his face was flushed and that he was sweating. Her teasing tone only made him more uncomfortable. As she continued to stare and smile seductively, Wenming's face turned an even deeper shade of red. Overwhelmed, he instinctively looked away, but Lady Ruyan laughed and complimented his reaction. She then invited him to sit and asked if he would allow her to feed him some fruit to quench his thirst. Meanwhile, outside the room, the old woman and Lady Ruyan's servant walked together. The servant expressed confidence that Lady Ruyan would be able to extract useful information from Wenming. The old woman agreed. However, their conversation was abruptly interrupted by an unexpected visitor. Upon seeing the man, the old woman paled in terror. She knew exactly who he was. Back inside the room, Lady Ruyan cheerfully picked up a piece of grapefruit and asked Wenming to open his mouth. As her hand approached, Wenming closed his eyes and insisted he could feed himself. Because of his resistance, the fruit slipped from her fingers, landing awkwardly on her chest. When Wenming opened his eyes, he unintentionally looked at where the fruit had fallen. Lady Ruyan seized the moment, playfully asking if he preferred to be fed in this manner instead. Flustered, Wenming quickly shut his eyes again, determined to resist her temptations. In Lady Ruyan's mind, she was amused. Wenming was far too easy to manipulate. As long as she kept him entranced, her plan would proceed smoothly. Suddenly, outside the room, the old woman was heard pleading with the man named Jia, explaining that Lady Ruyan was currently entertaining a guest. Hearing the name, both Wenming and Lady Ruyan froze. Jia, however, was unimpressed. Irritated, he commanded the old woman to be silent and step aside. Terrified, she hesitated, but Jia's anger only grew. He reminded her that his father was the prime minister and warned her not to defy him. Upon hearing this, Wenming's unease intensified. He knew exactly who Jia was. If Jia discovered him in a brothel, he would immediately report it to Empress Xian, and that could very well lead to his execution. Wenming's mind raced. He needed to escape as soon as possible. Lady Ruyan, noticing his tension, called out to him. Outside the room, Jia turned to the old woman and mockingly remarked that Wenming had already been castrated, suggesting that his visit here was a celebration of sorts. Smirking, he then demanded the company of the establishment's top courtesan, leaving the old woman visibly shaken. As she hesitated, Jia tossed extra coins at her, boasting that money was of no concern to him. Meanwhile, Eunuch Hai, watching from a distance, frowned in frustration. Jia's arrival was jeopardizing his carefully laid plans. Back inside, Jia suddenly pushed open the door, declaring his eagerness to witness the famed beauty of the Western courtesan for himself. However, the sight before him left him momentarily puzzled. He asked Lady Ruyan if she had been entertaining a guest, to which she casually responded that the man had jumped out the window the moment he heard Jia's name. Jia, reassured by the response, began inspecting the room. Unbeknownst to him, Wenming was actually hiding beneath Lady Ruyan's long dress, quietly mocking Jia in his thoughts. Lady Ruyan, though irritated, struggled to keep her composure. She needed to secure what she came for, and revealing Wenming now would only complicate matters. Jia took a seat beside her, remarking that he had long heard of Lady Ruyan's legendary beauty, but had never seen it for himself. Today, he considered himself fortunate. Lady Ruyan laughed gracefully, thanking him for the compliment, though internally, she felt nothing but disgust. Jia, growing more intrigued, was pleased with her reaction, but Lady Ruyan knew she had to handle the situation carefully. She couldn't afford to offend Jia, a high-ranking noble, yet she still had unfinished business with Wenming. With practiced elegance, she reached for a wine jug, offering Jia a drink to help him unwind after his travels. But as she extended the cup, Jia suddenly grasped her hand. Caught off guard, Lady Ruyan stiffened. Jia leaned in, assuring her that since it was just the two of them now, there was no need for her to be coy. Lady Ruyan, regaining her composure, firmly stated that she was a courtesan who sold art, not her body, and that he should respect that distinction. Jia, however, paid no heed to her words. Instead, he reached for her, prompting Lady Ruyan to quickly maneuver away from his grasp. Wenming, still concealed, grew increasingly anxious. What was Lady Ruyan doing? Meanwhile, Jia grew suspicious of Lady Ruyan's odd movements as she spun around the room. Concerned, he called out to her. Thinking quickly, Lady Ruyan reclined onto the bed, subtly adjusting her dress. Unbeknownst to Jia, Wenming's face was now uncomfortably close to her lower half. Jia approached her, asking if something was wrong. Lady Ruyan, forcing a gentle smile, claimed he had simply startled her. Below her, Wenming was mortified. Even with Lady Ruyan acting as cover, the situation was undeniably suspicious. Then, in an accidental movement, Wenming's hand landed firmly on Lady Ruyan's rear, giving it a squeeze. Lady Ruyan gasped in shock. Jia, misinterpreting her reaction, grew even more excited, asking if she was trying to seduce him. Lady Ruyan, now visibly flustered, hastily denied the claim. As she glanced downward, she seethed at Wenming, cursing him under her breath. Wenming, equally panicked, muttered that he had only been trying to see clearly. Jia, swept up in excitement, climbed onto the bed, asking if he could join her. Lady Ruyan, now at a loss for what to do, attempted to push him away. However, as Jia ran his hands over her skin, he suddenly paused. Something felt off. He muttered about her needing to shave, then suddenly lifted her skirt. Lady Ruyan froze. Jia's eyes widened in shock as he discovered Wenming hidden beneath her dress. Wenming, equally startled, could only stammer. Would Jia believe whatever excuse he came up with? Overcome with rage, Jia immediately seizes Wenming by the collar, while Wenming struggles to pacify him, reminding Jia that a true gentleman does not act in such a manner. Jia confronts Wenming, asserting that as a eunuch, he should remain within the palace, and leaving without authorization is a capital offense. Wenming, however, insists to Eunuch Hai that he did not leave of his own accord. Furious, Jia challenges Wenming, questioning why he had not encountered him earlier and why a eunuch like him would be in such a place. Meanwhile, outside, Eunuch Hai remains hidden, realizing that proceeding with the plan now would only lead to trouble. Deciding it is best to retreat for the moment, he watches the situation unfold. Inside the room, Wenming grows anxious and appeals to Jia, reminding him of their long-standing friendship and urging him not to push him into a corner. However, Jia merely smirks, dismissing the sentiment, declaring that invoking their past will not change anything. Jia then recalls their youth, remembering how Wenming had tormented him simply because he once admired Empress Xian. Wenming even went so far as to frame him, falsely accusing him of soiling himself in her presence, which caused Empress Xian to avoid him ever since. As he grew older, Jia sought Empress Xian's recognition through his talents, aiming to enter the palace. However, during the imperial exams, Wenming sabotaged him by swapping his test paper, resulting in Jia's humiliating failure. Upon hearing this, Lady Ruyan expresses disappointment in Wenming, accusing him of being heartless. Wenming, in turn, attempts to downplay the incident, calling it nothing more than a harmless joke between friends. Jia, enraged, insists that his betrayal did not end there. After his failure, Empress Xian assigned him to care for the palace horses, condemning him to years of hardship amidst the stench and filth of the stables. Feigning innocence, Wenming awkwardly smiles and remarks that he had only heard that Jia liked horses. Jia bursts into laughter, mocking Wenming for his eunuch status and accusing him of indulging in celebrations at the Chonghua Pavilion. Wenming retorts that Jia should not use this as an excuse to frequent brothels. Without warning, Jia drags Wenming out of the room, taunting him by expressing his surprise at catching him sneaking out of the palace. He assures Wenming that he will personally return him to Empress Xian, leaving his fate in her hands. Wenming, struggling, forcefully breaks free from Jia's grip, recognizing the danger he is in. In a desperate move, Wenming grabs a bottle of wine and hurls it toward Jia, vowing to kill him. However, Jia effortlessly stops the attack, causing Wenming to panic, realizing that Jia is far stronger than he expected. With a smug grin, Jia mocks Wenming, calling him a fool. He reveals that after spending years with the palace horses, he mastered a secret technique, making his time there anything but wasted. He sarcastically refers to it as a bare-handed horse manure deflection technique, laughing maniacally. Jia continues to drag Wenming outside, declaring that now that he is in his grasp, he should abandon all hope of leaving alive. Wenming retaliates, warning Jia that his father will not spare him for this act. Meanwhile, Lady Ruyan watches anxiously, knowing that if Wenming perishes, her plans will be ruined, as he is her only means of entering the palace. Determined to intervene, she reaches for something she had been saving for the right moment. Calling out to Jia in a sultry tone, she persuades him to pause, enticing him with the offer of a drink before he departs. Jia immediately takes notice. As he turns, Lady Ruyan seductively reminds him that since he has just arrived, it would be rude to leave without enjoying their hospitality. She subtly manipulates the situation, implying that if he leaves with Wenming too soon, the madam will blame herself for failing to entertain him properly. Both Jia and Wenming are momentarily taken aback by her demeanor. After a brief contemplation, Jia concedes, admitting that he had not considered it from that perspective. Confident that Wenming cannot escape with his guards securing all exits, Jia decides to indulge in Lady Ruyan's hospitality. He agrees to stay for a drink, much to Lady Ruyan's delight. Seated at the table, Jia reminds Lady Ruyan that he is in a pleasant mood and expects to be well served, promising a generous reward in return. Lady Ruyan graciously accepts, while Wenming, still bound, and watches uneasily. Lady Ruyan exchanges a subtle glance with Wenming, hinting at her true intentions. Wenming quickly catches on, realizing that she is trying to assist him. As part of her ploy, Lady Ruyan sits beside Jia, pouring him a drink. While he eagerly accepts, she discreetly slips a vial of potion beneath the wine glass. Suddenly, she deliberately spills the wine onto Jia's uniform, feigning distress as she apologizes profusely. Unfazed, Jia assures her that it is not a problem, clearly entranced by her charm. As the scent of the potion permeates the air, Jia inhales it, momentarily dazed. Lady Ruyan keenly observes his reaction, knowing the concoction is taking effect. Feigning concern, she asks if he is feeling unwell, subtly coaxing him into a trance-like state. The soul-enchanting mist begins to work, and she repeatedly asks if he is becoming drowsy and willing to obey her commands. Wenming watches in amazement, recognizing that Lady Ruyan is using a specialized technique to manipulate Jia's mind. Observing her tattoo, he quickly deduces that she is connected to a mysterious organization. Lady Ruyan reinforces the spell, instructing Jia to listen only to her, erasing any memory of their presence. In his dazed state, Jia complies, acknowledging that he remembers no one but her. Satisfied, Lady Ruyan assures Jia that after his deep sleep, he will obey her every command. However, to her shock, Jia suddenly snaps out of the trance and rises to his feet, his expression darkening. Enraged, he grips Lady Ruyan's wrist, demanding to know why she tried to bewitch him. She is taken aback, unable to comprehend how he broke free so suddenly. Jia chuckles and explains that after years of working with horse manure, he has lost sensitivity to scents, rendering her potion ineffective. Stunned, Lady Ruyan realizes she had underestimated the resilience of such an unusual upbringing. Without warning, Jia strikes Lady Ruyan, sending her sprawling to the floor. He accuses both her and Wenming of conspiring against him all along. As Jia rants, Wenming seizes the opportunity, swiftly grabbing a vase and smashing it over Jia's head. Jia collapses to the ground, leaving Lady Ruyan momentarily stunned. As they observe Jia, Lady Ruyan is perplexed, noting that despite the spell's lingering effects, Jia still managed to resist. Wenming theorizes that the drug weakened his reflexes, making him vulnerable to attack. Curious, Wenming questions Lady Ruyan about her combat skills, suspecting she is more than just a courtesan. Amused, she playfully evades the question, claiming she only intervened to save him. Suddenly, Lady Ruyan grabs Wenming's hands and presses them against her chest, declaring that from the moment she laid eyes on him, her heart belonged to him. Wenming, irritated, quickly pulls away. Lady Ruyan retrieves another potion, prompting Wenming to challenge whether she believes the same trick will work on him. She coyly explains that, unlike others, her charms alone are enough to lower his defenses. With a swift kick, she knocks Wenming off balance, causing him to fall. Towering over him, she smirks, remarking that while he may be intelligent, he lacks physical strength. Panicked, Wenming demands to know her true intentions, but Lady Ruyan simply straddles him, assuring him that she means no harm. Despite his threats, she teasingly presses against him, causing Wenming to grow increasingly flustered. To her surprise, she notices something unusual, her expression shifting to one of shock and realization. Blushing, she exclaims in astonishment, while the guards outside chuckle at her words, misinterpreting them as compliments to Jia. The other guard, unfazed, remarks that courtesans always say such things. Lady Ruyan was taken aback upon realizing Wenming was not a eunuch. Wenming quickly clarified that the whole situation was simply a misunderstanding. However, Lady Ruyan was enraged. Grabbing hold of undeniable proof, she scolded him for making excuses. It was clearly still intact, and there was no misunderstanding at all. Furious, she tightened her grip, cursing the inaccurate intel, while Wenming cried out in pain, begging her to stop. Tears welled in Lady Ruyan's eyes as she hadn't expected Wenming to deceive her and take advantage of the situation earlier. If word got out, wouldn't her dignity be ruined? Overcome with rage, she drew her dagger. There was no turning back now. Her plan had changed, and the only way to resolve this was to silence him for good. Wenming's face paled at the sight of the blade. But just as she lunged forward, her dagger struck the floor instead, barely missing him. Wenming, terrified beyond words, realized how close he had come to death. Without hesitation, he scrambled to his feet and bolted, but in his panic, he stumbled to the ground. Tears streamed down his face as he questioned how a simple visit to a brothel had turned into a life-or-death ordeal. It seemed his luck had been particularly awful as of late. Meanwhile, Lady Ruyan gave chase, and Wenming, sensing her presence, quickened his pace. Just as she reached him, she seized him by the throat and slammed him against the wall, causing him to cough up blood. With her dagger poised at his throat, she declared that someone as shameless as him didn't deserve to live. In desperation, Wenming shouted, reminding her that if she killed him, how would she complete her mission for the Heaven Lotus sect? Lady Ruyan froze, momentarily stunned by his words. After a brief pause, she awkwardly denied any affiliation with the sect, but Wenming scoffed, calling her a terrible liar. Her skills were sloppy, and she needed to put the dagger down. With a sigh, Lady Ruyan tossed the dagger aside, claiming exhaustion from work. Yet, deep down, her thoughts raced. How had he uncovered her secret? If her true identity were exposed, it would spell disaster. Trying to regain control, Lady Ruyan stated that joining the Heaven Lotus sect was a crime punishable by death, and questioned whether he was joking. Wenming, however, was unfazed. He urged her to drop the act, confident in what he had seen. Members of her sect bore a distinct tattoo, and he had just seen it with his own eyes. Lady Ruyan pretended not to hear him, though inwardly she smirked. Sisi, visibly angry, questioned why Wenming, a supposed eunuch, was even in a place like this. Wenming insisted on his innocence, explaining that Eunuch Hai had brought him there. Empress Xian watched in silence as Sisi dismissed Wenming's claims, pointing out that she had seen him being pushed by a courtesan. Wenming once again defended himself, insisting he was telling the truth. Then, Sisi called out to Lady Ruyan, directing attention toward her. Wenming's nervousness grew. Lady Ruyan, exuding a composed aura, acted as if nothing had transpired between her and Wenming. But internally, she warned him to tread carefully. If he said the wrong thing, she would make sure to take him down with her, even at the cost of her own life. Thinking quickly, Wenming explained that Lady Ruyan was merely a masseuse, trying to locate the right acupuncture points for his massage. Lady Ruyan, seeing an opportunity to defuse the situation, agreed. Empress Xian, convinced by their explanation, mentioned that she had been experiencing sore arms from reviewing documents and requested a massage as well. Sisi, however, was frustrated that the Empress believed them so easily. Lady Ruyan, though irritated, had no choice but to comply. As she approached Empress Xian, she shot a glare at Wenming, who deliberately avoided eye contact. Inwardly, she reasoned that since Wenming had no qualms about betraying her, he had no right to complain if she dragged him down with her. Reaching the Empress, Lady Ruyan began massaging her arms and casually remarked that Wenming had fallen because she had discovered a shocking secret about him. Empress Xian, intrigued, inquired about the nature of this secret. Leaning in, Lady Ruyan whispered conspiratorially, preparing to reveal the truth. But just as the words left her lips, Wenming abruptly shoved her away. Frantically, he announced that the secret she was about to disclose was that he, too, was a skilled masseuse. Without missing a beat, he began massaging Empress Xian, claiming that Lady Ruyan had merely learned her techniques from him. Satisfied, Empress Xian accepted his explanation, while Lady Ruyan clenched her teeth in frustration. Wenming leaned in and warned her to be more creative with her lies, further infuriating her. Just then, Sisi, observing their interaction, grew suspicious. She asked why the two of them kept winking at each other, causing both to freeze in place. Sisi then pointed to Jia, who lay unconscious on the floor. If Wenming had only been practicing massage, Then why was there an unconscious man in the room? Was he hiding something that outsiders weren't meant to know? In a desperate attempt to divert suspicion, Wenming dropped to his knees, claiming that Jia and Eunuch Hai had tricked him, humiliating him after discovering that he was castrated. Empress Xin, moved by his plight, expressed sympathy, condemning Jia's cruelty. Sisi, however, remained skeptical, frustrated by the Empress's willingness to believe Wenming so easily. Angered, Sisi grabbed Jia and slapped him repeatedly, demanding that he wake up. Panicking, Wenming pleaded with her to stop. At last, Jia stirred, groaning in confusion as he regained consciousness. His eyes darted around the room before landing on Wenming, and almost instantly, his expression darkened with fury.
Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe. And if you'd like to contribute further, you can now buy me a coffee. Every little bit helps in creating more quality content for you. Just click the Buy Me a Coffee link in the description below. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you never miss a new video.